Morning.
Morning. Welcome to NEURODIVERSI-TEA Time with me, Amanda, and our incredible special guest this week, Tom Nicholson.
Hey.
Hello.
Now, you may be listening to this live on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You may be accessing it via, where else? The other places that exist, YouTube, live now across all those channels. You may be watching on Rewind, or you may be listening via your podcasting host of choice. Either way, we welcome you. This is a live conversation we're having every Friday. We're now going to discuss a key topic each week with an incredible guest. So every week we're going to share what we're going to discuss. We're going to put it in the comment section, in the intro section, whatever you call it, across whatever channel you're on. So either come and join us 10 a.m. Friday morning, UK time, or listen on Rewind, because we're going to give a lot of excitement and enthusiasm to the topic of diversity. So episode 3 already. 3. Okay. Too much to celebrate on episode 3. We'll see if we get to episode 10 first with the old ADHD brains to see this thing through. But before we get started, I guess let's have a word from our guest today, Tom Nicholson. Tom, would you like to just give everybody an introduction to who you are and what you do?
Lovely. No, thank you very much. Thank you for having us, and Amanda. My name is Tom Nicholson, or Dr. Tom Nicholson now, as of earlier this month. I finally passed my PhD Viva with no amendments, which was very shocking and surprising. I know I was
amazing, Tom. That's amazing. I don't know anybody who's never had amendments.
I don't know many people either, and it was a little bit of a shock. I'm currently a lecturer of mental health nursing at Northumbria University. My PhD was on the parental experience of the ADHD diagnostic journey. So what's it like to be a parent on that journey? How does your story change from pre-diagnosis, at the time of diagnosis, and post-diagnosis? Separately, I have my own business where I deliver neurodiversity, ADHD specific training into anyone who really have us, but predominantly schools and healthcare organizations. I was diagnosed with ADHD myself. I struggle with how to identify myself, because I call myself neurodiverse or neurodivergent, but I don't call myself an ADHD because I find the language, the link, it doesn't quite work for us. You know, I can't say autistic or dyslexic with ADHD. We don't have that.
We haven't got an ick. We need an ick.
we need an ick. I need an identifier, which I still haven't quite found one that fits for me yet. And prior to that, I was a mental health nurse in an ADHD assessment and autism assessment service. So ADHD neurodiversity has been my life, essentially. So that's where I am currently, and I'm really happy to be here.
Great. That's wonderful, isn't it? It really is. And it's interesting. So we've got this sort of multi-generational, professional blurring of why we're all here for lots of different reasons that sort of bleed at the edges, in a sense, of our experiences. You know, so that's brilliant. Well done with your PhD. That's fantastic news.
Thank you. It's been a long journey.
But anybody who wants to hear more about Tom's journey, because we've got a 30-minute chat today. But if you want to have a deep dive into Tom's life with me, there's a podcast, and I'm launching it next week with Tom. So you'll be able to come and hear that neurodiversity, eliminating kryptonite, enabling superheroes. If you want to hear more just from Tom and a little bit from me as well. So just want to say good morning to everybody who's joined us live. Richard, Kerry, Rick, Richards again. Craig, Lee, Matthew, Kerry, Catherine. I'm saying lots of names twice because I think they may have commented when we first set it up. Julia, Matthew, Joe. Good morning, and anybody else who's just joining us.
Morning.
So Amanda gave us a lovely video. We missed it last week, but we didn't have to fully miss her because she gave us a lovely video that we ended with, because I thought that was a great kind of framing for today's conversation. So Amanda, can we just touch base with you again, and can you frame today's conversation? Obviously we'll catch up with weekly news and anything else that's going on, and we'll engage with the chat as well, but I thought that was a lovely little piece you did there, and probably resonates really well with Tom's incredible work as well.
I think it fits in with Tom's work completely, you know, about parents' experiences and managing particularly times of transition, you know, and I think that when we're going, whether it's transitioning and going through that process of taking your child for an assessment, what that feels, what that means, what the language is you're having, the discussion you're having with your children. I always remember having I had a clinical setting for years, and people coming to the centre would go, "What have you said to him, her?" And they go, "Well, we thought you would talk about it." And we're thinking, where have they been? They've been on a 200-mile journey. You think they've gone to McDonald's? No advertising, but you know, what did that child think was going on? So the narrative that parents go through themselves, when you're thinking about your child might have ADHD, autism, any neurodivergent trait, but also how you explain that and the framing you have. That's one transition. And then the second transition I think we want to talk about today is really about the transitions that are happening. We're going into Easter. After Easter, people are preparing for where are children going in September. If they're going to a new school, they're going to a new class, they're going to secondary school, they're moving on. And for lots of parents, those transitions are really challenging. So I thought maybe let's just talk about that and Tom's experiences, your experiences, my experiences, and everybody else's experience as well. Come in there, put it in the comments. Think about what concerns you, what you found useful, helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. Just to quickly jump in, and then Tom, would be lovely to hear from you. One transition that I'm going through, just one of the many transitions, is that not next year, but the year after my daughter will go to high school. So already we're meeting with the high school, we're talking to her current school, we're getting everybody involved, we're thinking about the plan, special educational needs plan.
The EHCP, the educational healthcare plan.
And so so that's in place. We were I say lucky enough because I see so many stories of people having to fight legal battles to get it, and therefore all of that is happening a year and a half before she even gets it, and we realise that's not too
amazing. Amazing that's happening, you see, because that is brilliant, because you want a good transition plan in plenty of time so your child feels familiar and secure and knows what's going to go on, because the transition from primary to school is massive. You're going from not just one teacher, one class, but lots of teachers, lots of classes, lots of pupils, traveling maybe on your own, so loads of independent stuff. And for lots of kids, we see have executive functioning difficulties, and that challenge is hard.
Absolutely. I think it also gives the school staff at the new school an opportunity to know your child, to know what works for them, because often just having a piece of paper with this is what the preferences are for my child, it's not enough. It's that having that contact, having that ability to build that sort of rapport, professional relationship with the child, to then make that initial sort of foray into the new environment more comfortable. One of the things I would always recommend is if you could get a picture of the child with the teacher in the new school, and then put that picture on the fridge, so that all the way through the summer holidays, the neurodiverse child is seeing and normalizing that teacher being someone who's going to be quite pronounced in their life in a few months' time.
Absolutely. And I would always do visits to the school, names of the teachers, so they can get used to that. If they've got to learn things like getting changed for PE, and they haven't had to do that so much in their junior school, you've got a change of uniform. You know, I see things like you were wearing tracky pants and now you're wearing trousers, and the kid can't undo the top. Some very practical things that if you can practice those things, if you're changing, you're playing rugby or whatever, you can do shoelaces, all of a sudden, some of the things that might be, and those small things, and toilets. We forget about toilets. Some toilets have a tap, some have this, some have that, some have this. Not all toilets are the same. And the child might be used to one set and not, you know. So absolutely think about the small stuff. I'm going to post loads over the next few weeks on transition. I've got a whole pack of stuff on transition. So I'm going to put lots of strategies from Easter onwards for helping people, because it's the small bits that trip you up. It really is.
Yeah.
You know.
I think to sort of like jump onto something similar on the same vein is, from a parental perspective, one of the things I've always found is that parents have spent so much time getting their children's needs validated, getting them understood. They've had the diagnosis perhaps, and that diagnosis has been accepted by a previous school or a previous environment, previous professionals. And then the fears of moving to a new environment is then, will people believe me? Will people believe in the diagnosis, in the differences, in that spiky profile? Or will I have to begin a new fight, a new journey of validation of not just their needs, but also literally the diagnosis, you know? And that's what I've found a lot in my work going into schools and working with parents, is that for many of them, there is this real anxiety around how much confidence will there be in that the child needs any additional support at all. And I think sometimes, on the total flip side of what Theo was saying about this amazing sort of really long form support, often it goes from lots of support to significantly less.
And that's crazy, isn't it? Because the one thing is, executive functioning demands go up as you get older and you've got more independence. Scaffolding goes down. So you don't take your mum with you to secondary school. You know, you can't come and sit in the class and help. And in primary school, you've got less executive functioning demands. So environmental variation goes up, task demands go up, and you're going through puberty, which is horrible as well. So, you know, all of those things. So you're bound to need more support as you get older, not less support. Yet we often think they're doing okay here, so they need less support. And you're right, validating that with parents having to go, no, the demand's going up. We're trying to predict what might be a challenge. Let's prepare for it is so important at this stage.
And I think as well, even on that, is if for parents who maybe haven't talked through neurodiversity or the diagnosis with their children, so the children are like unaware of that they are autistic or ADHD, as they get older, and sometimes those differences become a bit more pronounced socially or what have you, and then those conversations start coming as well, and then it's parents thinking, how am I going to have these conversations? How am I going to explain neurodiversity or ADHD or autism or dyslexia to my child? On top of everything you've just said there, it becomes this real, like, sort of socially scary environment for parents. And I think having resources or almost like ready answers or ready narratives can be really helpful.
You might need to prepare your, you know, it's that thing of, do you have a narrative that says this is what I'm good at, this is what I find challenging, and how you introduce that at that age when kids are in teen years worrying about being like their peers. They're less worried about influence by parents. You know, look at emerging adulthood. So peer-peer interaction and validation is actually the most important thing as you're moving through adolescence. So having your framing of who you are, who I am, and a concept of self is really important, you know, for young people. And I think, it's a hard one. Theo, sorry.
Let me add to that, right? So the extra layer of that is the parents currently might be going through their own transition. Now, that may be perimenopausal transition, or whatever the correct terminology might be for that, for the mum. And then obviously the mum's partner will also be going through that transition of support with them. They've got their child and their transition. There's co-occurrence and complexity in neurological makeup across that dynamic as well. So we're not just talking about a child going through that journey. We're talking about two adults and trying to retain a relationship and trying to retain a family, trying to retain a job, trying to retain a roof. Like, when you think of that level of complexity, whilst also trying to influence teachers who are under significant pressure, underfunded, undersupported, a government that is talking about it, but governments, I will say, because I'm not, you know, not specific part, but just generally this stuff it gets talked about a lot, but nothing ever seems to happen. So you add all of that together, and then you've got to think about this child. And how do they have an EHCP, or are you fighting a legal battle to get one? Or even though you've got one, they then discount it because your child's performing okay, so we don't need it anymore. No. Like you said, Amanda, the social impact and the psychological impact and the risk to mental health and well-being and eating disorders and suicidal thoughts and all these other things that can transition across that whole family network, I just find mind-blowing.
Okay, so let me calm you down, okay? and let's look at tangibly what we can do. Okay, because I think as parents, if you start off and going, how am I going to cope over the next 10 years? Oh my goodness, none of us can do that, and we just go into panic mode. So I think the easiest thing, in my experience as a new grandma this week, I have to tell you, that's my news, is think in 3-year blocks. Okay, I think you have to think in 3-year blocks, because you need to be thinking about, what do I want my child to be able to do in the next 3 years, right? Not the next 10 years, not the next 20 years. And if survive, okay. And then start going from the getting up in the morning to going to bed at night. Think of a daily cycle of things that you want and they need to be able to do. So planning, and also remember, time in the morning, there's a funny thing about it, it's shorter than time in the evening, okay? So there's a time warp happens, okay? So if you're preparing, especially if they're going to secondary school, bag by the door the night before, clothes laid out, you organized as well, because that 10 minutes in the morning just goes, it really does. You've got more time. So again, if you're, as you say, Theo, many neurodivergent kids will have neurodivergent parents. So the more we can do that planning and organization in the evening, even if you're knackered, but the fact that you can get things done the night before, right, means it's calmer. Because if your child is feeling agitated going to school and they're worried about forgetting their rugby gear, their then the more we can plan the night before, the better. And I would say 3 pencil cases, right? Always have 3. So you have one in the bag, one stays in school in the locker, one stays at home, so that you're not looking for a compass on a Sunday evening, or you're not looking for a protractor, which is you never have a protractor when you need one. So I think some of those things we can really help very tangibly with times of transition to reduce the anxiety level, so you've got enough capacity to cope with the variation and keeping you calm, right? I'm on hotline, Theo, okay? Keeping you calm so your kids are calm as well. All right. Yeah,
but I want to jump in on something you said there, because you talked about having 3 pencil cases, which I actually totally agree with. But it's not just 3 pencil cases for me; it's a couple of everything. Yeah. And I often talk about this. It's like the ADHD tax. You lose something, and then it costs money to replace, or you misplace something. So it's thinking you don't just have one PE kit; you have your PE kit, your transition PE kit, which is wherever, but there's always one in the boot.
Absolutely.
I always, even just personally, I've always got a gym kit in the boot. I've always got, I recently lost my glasses, obviously, I don't know where they've gone, just disappeared from picking up my son at my mom's house to getting to my house, that just disappeared. So, and I didn't have a spare pair of glasses. So I fell on my own strategy, because I hadn't gotten a spare pair of glasses, because I'd only recently needed them. And so with parents, I would say, have multiple of the most important things.
I agree. Like locker keys, if they've got a locker key and they've lost the locker key, it causes too much angst if you don't. So what you're trying to do is reduce your angst and their angst. So having spares is incredibly useful. It really is, And I think being realistic, it's like me. I've got millions of pairs of glasses all over the place, Tom. So I'm always I'm blind without my glasses these days. So you're right. It's otherwise it causes and we learn that, and you learn that longer term as an adult. You're trying to prepare kids for adult life. Is that we need to be prepared. We need to have alarms. We need to use the diary systems. The more we can get our kids to do that, exactly. All on
my watch.
All on my laptop. My diary is everything. It's my other brain. You've got to. The more we can teach our kids things about executive functioning practically, we're preparing them, and actually they can be super good at it then. That's the thing. We're trying to reduce anxiety for them and in you.
Yeah, and on that as well, it's to have, I find having a ritual or a strategy, a morning strategy, where things are in the same place every morning. This is where that goes, this is where your shoes go, this is where your coat goes, and there's almost a sort of ritual structure of going through each moment, which lends itself to a sort of neurodiverse brain anyway. But it also means that there's no scrambling for, oh, hang on, where is this thing? Where's the lunchbox? It's in the lunchbox place. And often we would talk about having, I forget the term for it, where you'd have a box at the front of the door,
for your keys and everything.
with everything that's really important. And that's where my wallet goes, that's where my glasses go, that's where my keys go. But if my wife was to move those and put them somewhere else, they might as well not exist.
No.
So
it's a place for everything and everything in its place. Is that saying? It's huge.
However,
go on.
Stuff still ends up in a dishwasher that shouldn't be there. Stuff still ends up like in the pencil case, like the car keys end up in your daughter's pencil case, and you spend ages trying to find them. Or like just stuff ends up in silly places still, right? No matter how much I plan, I've got like 5 umbrellas. You still can't find an umbrella when it's raining and you get soaked, you know.
Well, there's no perfection. There's no perfection. But the more, color coding can really help. We can help, I remember with your kids going to secondary school, color code everything. So have a timetable color coded with the same tab of the color for the geographies in green and biologies in red, so they can quickly find things. It works for us as well. A color box that we can see and distinguish. I used to do it with the kids with dirty washing, clean washing. At least it was sort of like not a mound of stuff in teen years, sort of like this pile. So cataloging in big colors can really help. Timetable on the kitchen, timetable in the bath, in the bedroom. All of those things can make a big difference. So a bit of color and a place. You're right.
And just to touch on something here, Catherine has just mentioned, I bumped into Catherine for the first time in the dyslexia show the other week, which was lovely. I wish I'd known this. I had this knowledge when my daughter was young. How many parents do you think where their children now maybe are already in high school, later diagnosis here, so many kids in the 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, like, there must be a lot of feeling of missed opportunities. That must be really difficult as well for people as you send your kids on, and then maybe trying to do catch up, right? Trying to rush and go, well, how can I catch them all up with this knowledge and experience? And
I think it's a dual issue thing, because I hear that all of the time when it comes to later diagnosis. People don't know about the children haven't been assessed or diagnosed, and they don't know that that they've been seeing it as, what the language I use is, they call them a naughty neurotypical child. No, they're a normal neuroatypical child, and that when they're able to shift that that narrative, and then they look back and they go, oh God, I wish I had known and done things differently. And then that links to exactly what we're talking about here of practically. But I think perfection can be the thief of the better, in that now that you do know that there's still so much time, there's still a lifetime ahead.
There is.
And whether you start late, whether early school and GCSEs didn't go well, A levels didn't go well or didn't happen, that doesn't necessarily mean the end. But your sort of educational journey or your social journey or your any journey can start slightly later. So yes, there might have been this missed opportunity, but at the same time, that doesn't mean there is not now more opportunity or future opportunity.
And we can learn. We can put those strategies in place today. So some of these things, and the strategies we're trying to do for our kids are important for ourselves. However, I would have a caveat for all of us. It's not to beat ourselves around the head, right? Most of us are consistently inconsistent, in a sense of we'll do it okay, but we won't always do it because we're human. And I think not to hit ourselves over the head when things don't quite work. I think Praveen saying a place for everything is good, but in our ND household, agreeing that a place is a challenge. And I think that's the bit. So having that bit, like you're saying, Tom, regular meetings, almost regular, let's agree things, let's have those routines, even if it's on the end of the day, having people, we all like scaffolding. We like to have things and frames around us. It's just agreeing some of those things, and they'll work for some people in the family. They won't work for everybody. But they'll be a lifesaver for some of us. They really will,
Yeah.
I think one of the things is to understand that even though I think about my generation, the parents not maybe getting it and still not getting it a bit right in reality, like still chatting about neurodiversity, they're proud and everything else, but they're still like neuro what? But the reality, everyone's a bit dyslexic or whatever it is. That's a generational thing. But in reality, my view, and it's difficult because it's around the mental health and well-being of your child as well, right? But my view is almost like I bombed out of school and I bombed out of college, and I still managed as a mature student to go to university and get a degree. And I've heard similar stories about people going and getting a degree as a mature student, and almost like I'm glad I went as a mature student, because the perspective I had, the view I had, the thoughts I had. My nephew has gone through 3 different degrees. He's now studying a master's at Cambridge. You know, he's from a challenging background for many ways, and he is pushed the boundaries of what was expected or believed, and gone through 3 different types of degrees to find the right one for him. And in the end, ends up studying a master's in a place he never expected to be as well from his background. So I think sometimes as parents, we kind of put all this pressure on ourselves because society tells us they got to do good with GCSEs. Schools tell us they got to do good with whatever qualifications it is they're doing at that time. Society tells us they got to go to university quickly and get, right? In reality, I went to university with no qualifications at 21 as a mature student, because it wasn't required as soon as I hit mature student status. However, particular degree type of course considered, because you may still need maths or English, depending on what you're going for. But I think it's important, like, sometimes to relieve the pressure of parents to understand that life is not over because, like, your children did not meet the defined kind of standard of that day.
My PhD was in emerging adulthood, so the sort of 16 to 25 bit, and I think this is really pertinent to what you're saying. Some kids need longer to mature, and when we look at not cognitively but emotionally, and actually if you can stretch this stage a little bit, right, and allow young people to maybe start college, university a little bit later, gain some life experience, catch-up experience, often I see much greater success. So I think your brain, this part of the prefrontal cortex, takes longer to mature. And I think that's a bit, you're ready to study at that stage. Maybe our kids are not always ready to do that, the independent stuff, the leaving home stuff, and the and coping with that. And if we just allowed a bit of time for maturation to happen, real brain maturation to happen, you often see greater success. So I hear that a lot there, that a lot of people then started a degree, gave it up, started a degree, gave it up. But actually, if we just said, let's leave it a bit of life experience before we went back into academia. If you want to do that, that's your thing. I think we would have those conversations rather than seeing it as somebody's failed. It would be start off. And I think, you know, we used to, I think they've stopped, a lot of kids don't do gap years, they can't afford that sort of stuff, you know, but actually just going to get jobs and getting a bit of life and then think about what you want to do might help our kids quite a lot, I think.
Yeah, I think as well, on the absolute parallel of that is for many of our neurodiverse sort of population, is they don't go on to get A-levels and degrees, and they don't go on to get GCSEs, but they live wonderful, happy, healthy lives and have professions and have careers. And I would say the biggest, one of the 2 biggest stresses that parents brought up in clinically and in research, and when I've talked to them, has been, one's been, will my child have friends and will they have a social circle? But the other one is academic. Will they succeed academically? And yet, why do we want them to succeed academically? Typically, it's because we want them to be successful and to live happy, healthy lives and be able to function in society in whatever that means. But on the flip side, sometimes I'd say, actually, does education necessarily lead to that? Because for some people, education is traumatic. It is horrendous. It doesn't come naturally. They don't enjoy it. It's not for them. The educational environment isn't for them. But they go on to do apprenticeships or become entrepreneurs or become in a role where you don't need any education, and then have these wonderful, happy lives. Our musicians, our artists, our creatives.
Well, it's our shape of education, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah.
Because our shape of education is still often delivered in the industrial era rather than actually, preparing people to have critical thinking, socialization, empathy, you know, the things that we're going to need in our life. We do need today in our lives. So I think that the way we're delivering education still is not really helpful for a lot of our neurodivergent thinkers who can't sit still and can't write an assignment fast. So those things are really problematic. It's the shape of education that doesn't fit our kids, not our kids don't fit the education. If it changed, then that would have a lot more acceptance, I think, probably.
I just wanted to touch on a comment that Praveen was mentioned here. In some cultures like mine, the concept of neurological conditions doesn't exist. The language doesn't even have terms to explain it. I tried explaining late ADHD diagnosis to my parents, and there literally is no language term to explain it in my mother tongue. They thought I was diagnosed with dementia. Also, my parents were happy with autistic traits, and me being in my world was lauded as I was academically okay. And that's really important, right? The dependent on cultural nuances, where you grew up, community. I've heard this time and time again. The experiences can be far more challenging, even to gain acceptance, understanding, appreciation within your family and community. You know, I mentioned my mum and dad going, you know, it's not important, but that's not even to the layer that it can be talked about here, which is, you know, in the terms of dementia, you know, which is the medical issue that we've got a problem with, right? Of all the challenges and issues and you being broken. So we still have some way to go there, don't we?
I think we do. I mean, I think we've got to, when there aren't words and terms, you know, then it's very hard to describe strengths as well as challenges. And we need to be mindful of the words and language we use, because they can be harmful, hurtful, impactful, and wonderful, can't they? You know, it depends which ones we choose and how they're interpreted.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, both of you, is that when you have those sort of cultural barriers or differences that can add complexity, it can just add that extra level of stress. And then we talk about mental health difficulties and chronic stress and emotional distress, and then having its own cultural barrier sometimes as well, and then trying to sort of differentiate the mental health difficulties you might be having with those neurodivergent differences you might have. And it is really hard, and that's why we need to be constantly developing language. I mean, just at the start of today, I talked about, you know, the linguistic issue of ADHD. Even for us, we don't quite have that sort of strong identifier.
And that's where neurodiversity, I suppose, is a good topic, in the sense that we can talk about each of us as who we are, maybe less defined by a label and more defined by ourselves. But sometimes that's quite hard. I think we're near the top of the hour, aren't we?
Neurodiversity doesn't understand race. It doesn't understand age, ethnicity, gender. That is one, and that's not to devalue any element of that and the combination of individual experiences. But I really love the power of it. It enables everybody to get around the table and have a conversation around it to really explore what it means and how we can make a positive difference to the world that we live in, working together stronger. Little Welshism there type thing. Right.
Keep doing things like this.
For joining us again today. We're coming to a close. Come and join our group, NEURODIVERSI-TEA Time with Amanda and Theo. You can find that group. I can share links. I'll share it in these comments so you can access this. You can access this information, this content across a number of different platforms: YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also on your podcasting channel of choice. So if you'd rather listen to it in future back, you can do that, right? You don't have to come and watch us if that's not your preference. Listen, we've had a great engagement from the audience today. That's what it's about. Every week, we're going to pick a different topic. We'll let you know what that topic is. We'll invite an incredible guest like Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
No other will be like Tom, but they will have their own individual, wonderful approach, I'm sure. If you'd like to come on, let us know. If you've got a particular topic you want us to deal with, then also let us know. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me. Thank you for everyone in the chat for getting involved. I've really enjoyed it. Until next time.
I'll have you back again. Thank you, Tom.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Ta-da. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everyone.